We just stepped on their face with a hobnail boot and broke their nose. We just crushed their face.
What's up, guys? Welcome back to the Glory UGA podcast, brought to you by our good friends at MyBookie. Go to mybookie.ag, sign up for a new account using our code UGA, and your first bet will be fully covered, guys, all the way up to $500. Great deal. Jump on it while it lasts. But today on the show, we are officially turning that page with a deep dive preview of Georgia's next SEC game against the Kentucky Wildcats here in Athens on Saturday. We're going to be talking personnel. We're going to be talking numbers. We're going to be talking matchups. You name it, guys. We're breaking down everything about this Georgia-Kentucky matchup. But first, if you are a diehard Georgia fan and you have not already subscribed to this channel, go ahead, do yourself a solid, do me a solid, subscribe right now. I think you guys will enjoy the content we have here for you because this channel, everything we do is designed for all you Georgia diehards. So subscribe, like, comment, all that stuff, guys. I do greatly appreciate all your support. But all right, guys, last week, yeah, it sucked. We know that. There's no getting around it, but there's also no need to just sit here and ruminate on it over and over again. It's time to move on. There's a lot of season left, time to pick up, get back to work, and go win some more football games. And this week, it's Mark Stoops and the Kentucky Wildcats that come calling to Athens. And as we do every week here on this channel, we are going to do a deep dive preview of this matchup between the Dogs and the Cats. A lot of you seem to like the countdown format that I did last week previewing the Alabama game. That's an old favorite I've used in years past. Been doing the audio side for now 11 football seasons. Brought it back last week for that big Bama matchup. A lot of you seem to like it, so we're going to run it back. And if you're wondering what in the world do I mean by countdown format, it's simple, guys. I'm going to count down backwards from 5 to 1. I'm going to give you 5 names to know, 4 stats that matter, 3 matchups that I like, 2 players to watch, those are Georgia players to watch in this game, and 1 cause for concern. So with that, guys, let's kick things off, and let's start with the 5 players to know. Now, these are 5 Kentucky players to know, trying to get you guys familiar with this Wildcat team that will be playing on Saturday between the hedges. Off the top here, I always like to start with the quarterback position, whether it's a good quarterback or a quarterback, in this case, that is struggling, so to speak. I like to start that position because I am of the opinion, call me crazy, that the quarterback position, no matter who it is the most important position on any football team. And right now, guys, yeah, Kentucky is struggling at the quarterback position. To open the year, it was supposed to be Zach Calzada. If you are familiar with that name, that's because he's been around college football for a long time. He's a pre-COVID player from Georgia originally. I believe, if I'm correct, was it North Gwinnett? I believe we were kind of toying around with recruiting him back in the day. Ends up going to A&M out of high school. Didn't really work out for him there. Transfers to Auburn after a couple of years in College Station. Never saw the field at Auburn. Got hurt. Ends up then transferring down a level to the FBS level, going to Incarnate Word. Actually, I think at the time it was FCS level, but going to Incarnate Word and kind of rehabilitated himself, got his stats back up, got his confidence up, got his name back out there, and he parlayed some success at Incarnate Word into a transfer opportunity at Kentucky. And he did open the season as the starter. He was presumed to be the guy all season long, but he went down with an injury back week 2 against Ole Miss. And he's been out with a right shoulder injury, not great when you're a right-handed passer. And so he's been out since that point. He dressed out last week, but he was an emergency quarterback. Like, he wasn't even their second quarterback last week. He was like their third string emergency break glass in case emergency type quarterback last week in Columbia. So it's highly unlikely that he is going to play this week. Now, as of the time of this recording, I'm recording this on Tuesday afternoon. As of right now, we do not have an official injury report for this Georgia-Kentucky game. So we don't know for sure what his status is. But guys, judging on where he was a week ago and the type of injury it is to his throwing shoulder, I would still say it's highly unlikely for him to go from a break glass in case of emergency quarterback last week to all of a sudden being the starter on the road against Georgia this week. that would seem to be unlikely. So what does that mean? It's likely that Cutter Boley will be making his second career SEC road start. He started the last two games. He started against Eastern Kentucky 2 weeks ago, started against South Carolina. I guess it was 2 weeks ago. Started against South Carolina on the road last Saturday night. A lot of you probably did not catch that game because it was being played the exact same time that we were playing Alabama last night or last Saturday. So you probably didn't catch it unless you're a crazy junkie like me and you went back and you rewatched that, right? To break it down in preparation to do this episode for you guys here today. But let me just tell you guys, Cutter Boley is not a good quarterback. He has the bones of potentially developing into a good quarterback from a physical tool skill set standpoint, but he ain't there right now, guys. Right now, for his career, he's a sophomore, second-year player at Kentucky. Hasn't played a ton, right? But started the last two games. He is a career 51% passer, has 4 touchdowns to 6 interceptions to date in his career at Kentucky. Now, what he does have, as I mentioned, is prototypical size. He's got the goods physically, man. 6'5", 220, not an elite athlete, but a good athlete, a functional runner of sorts at that position, and he has a really live arm. He does have the ability to push the ball more vertically down the field than Calzada. Now, Calzada actually has a pretty strong arm, but he's not accurate down the field. There have been moments where Boley, when everything is right around him, when he has a clean pocket and he has time to sit there and find an open receiver, to dial something up for him, he has shown the ability to be accurate pushing the ball down the field. There just haven't been many opportunities for him to do that. So physically speaking, he actually is a talented kid. He's just at this point in his career not there yet. He just does not know how to play that position. What do I mean by that? He doesn't diagnose coverages very well post snap. He stares down receivers. He'll get locked on guys at times, and also like you'll see him try to go through progressions, but he doesn't know what he's looking at, guys. Like he misdiagnoses coverage all the time. He threw an interception in South Carolina, guys. This is a simple cover too. He's trying to throw a honeypot, and there was no flat route. There was no receiver in the flat to threaten the cornerback. So if that's the case, what does a cornerback do in cover two if there's no one threatening him in the flat? He sinks under the vertical route, under the corner route. And that's exactly what happened. Guys, like I don't play college football. I don't coach college football. I don't coach football anymore at all. I used to once upon a time. Don't do that anymore. So if I can sit there and see, like, what are you doing? What are you doing? And cover two is about as basic of a defense as there is to read, guys. And it was a very basic cover two look. They weren't even trying to disguise things, right? So that's what I'm talking about here. He just doesn't know how to play that position right now. He holds the ball way too long, does not have that internal clock right now, which was a major problem for them against South Carolina, as we're going to get to later on in the show when I break down some stats for you guys. They had a lot of trouble protecting the passer, but it wasn't all the offensive line. They weren't great. A lot of it, though, was the quarterback just holding the ball way too long because he was confused, doesn't know where to go with the football. So not the kind of guy that you would think would be able to come into Sanford Stadium, noon game or not, and just light Georgia up through the air, despite some of the issues that we have had defending the pass here in recent weeks. So that's number one. Player number two to know on this Kentucky roster is running back Seth McGowan. Guys, this dude is legit. He is a big-time running back. I think he's an NFL guy. Is he going to be an NFL starter? I don't know that for sure, but I wouldn't count him out, guys. Like, I think he's a really good running back. Right now, McGowan is the number 2 rusher in the SEC. He's a top 20 rusher nationally right now. That's how good this guy is. He's put together back-to-back 100-yard games. Yes, one of them was against Eastern Michigan. Okay. Last week was on the road at South Carolina at night. He's a guy that kind of is a total package from the running back position, in my opinion. He has good size, not the biggest back, but not a small guy. 6'1", 215. He's really athletic. I think he has really nice burst, acceleration. He can run with power, has good vision. He has explosiveness in his game. He's a really good running back, guys. And if you know anything about this guy, that name might ring familiar to you, Seth McGowan. That's because if you're a diehard Georgia fan, you're probably a big-time college football fan. You probably watch a lot of college football like I do. Well, Seth McGowan, back in the day, was a former top 150, fringe top 150 recruit at Oklahoma coming out of high school. But he was kicked off the Oklahoma team back in 2021, all the way in 2021, for allegedly, I have to say allegedly here, for allegedly robbing, beating and threatening a man stemming from what seemed to be, based on eyewitness accounts and you read the police reports, stemming from a drug deal gone bad. So basically, he was trying to get some weed from a drug dealer. The guy's like, "I'm not going to sell it to you." And then he shows up his house with allegedly with his hand under his shirt, like I got a fake gun. And then they end up beating the guy, taking his bag of weed, and threatening him, saying, "Don't come after us," or whatever, right? And so he was at the time facing 70 years in prison. So yeah, Oklahoma, rightfully so, booted this guy off the team. Dude, see ya, deuces, see you later, man. And it looked like his career might be over when you have that type of legal issue facing you. But he got the legal issue straightened out. Good for him. One way or another, got it straightened out. And then started like sending text messages to like going through his DMs from back when he was being recruited and like saying like, who do I know? I want one more shot. And he ends up getting hooked up with some people that got him a spot at a JUCO. And then he parlays that into a chance at New Mexico State, which is a G5 program, not a great G5 program. It's where Diego Pavia came from, but a G5 program nonetheless. Had a really good year last year at New Mexico State, and that opened up an opportunity for him to transfer to Kentucky. And right now, guys, he's making the most of it. I'm dead serious, guys. Seth McGowan is a legit running back. Like, that guy could play for Georgia on Saturday. Like, he's that good. I think he's an NFL type guy. So to me, he is, I think, clearly their best offensive player, their best offensive threat, and it's not even remotely close to me. So he is the guy offensively to know for this Kentucky offense. Now, there's another running back they have as well. I don't think he's as good as McGowan, but he is a good back, and that's Dante Dowdle. He's been in a couple of different schools. He started in Oregon, transferred to Nebraska, where he was a year ago. Wasn't elite in Nebraska, about 600-ish yards rushing, and then this year transferred to Kentucky. And he was more or less like the first game or two a co-number one with McGowan to open the season. They were getting very similar reps. But recently, McGowan has become clearly the number one option because it's very clear when you watch him play. Like, he's the dude. He's just different. Not that Dowdle's bad. He's just not the type of back that McGowan is. But he's still a solid back. He's a bigger guy, too, so it gives him a little bit something different. 6'2", between like 225, 230. So good back, but he's clearly the second fiddle right now. He doesn't have quite the explosiveness in his game, the acceleration, that burst that McGowan does, but he can run the power. He's got good vision. He is a good, serviceable SEC back. So a nice 1-2 punch there for Kentucky in the backfield. Number 4, I've got a wide receiver slash jack of all trades on offense, and that is Kendrick Law. Another name you might be familiar with because Georgia's played Alabama each of the last 3 years, right? And he was previously at Alabama. So he transferred to Alabama prior to this season. The way I would describe him for you guys out there that are looking for a comp, Kendrick Law to me is like a slightly more explosive version of Dylan Bell. That's kind of what he's been in his career. Now, he hasn't been remotely as productive as Dylan, but whether it was at Alabama or now at Kentucky, they kind of use him like that. They'll use him in the fly sweep game. They'll line him in the backfield at times, use him in the screen game, those kind of things. He's got some versatility in his game. Let's say that. Now, the issue for him is, again, he hasn't been like remotely productive in his career, which is it's crazy to me because when I look at this guy on the field, when he does get opportunities to touch the football, it's like, all right, he's got some athleticism. Like, this guy can make plays, but he just hasn't made all that many of them in his career because he hasn't really had that many opportunities. When you're at Alabama, guys, there's a ton of players. Like, you think, 2024 is going to be your year. Then Ryan Williams comes in, and Ryan Williams does what Ryan Williams does. Some injuries set Kendrick Law back. So he ends up transferring out. And at this point in his career, he's never had more than 135 yards from scrimmage. He only has one career touchdown, whether that's running, receiving, only one career touchdown. But again, when I look at Kendrick Law out there on the field, he just seems so much more physically gifted to me than that. Like, his production does not match what I think he is capable of with the athleticism and skill set that he brings to the table. I had been waiting for years for this guy to break out. It just hasn't fully happened yet. Opportunities haven't been there. Injuries have been a problem. And now he's at Kentucky. And he hasn't put together huge numbers this year. Through 4 games, 13 catches, 110 yards, very modest numbers. But outside of McGowan, I think McGowan is their most dynamic weapon. I would say that Kendrick Law is the next most dynamic, certainly the more versatile weapon that they have on this Kentucky offense. So certainly a player to watch, even though the production hasn't been there. I think he's a guy that's capable of generating big plays if given opportunities, if Kentucky will figure out a way to use him correctly, which we know for Kentucky offensively, that's always a struggle for them. That struggle city USA for Kentucky is they just don't know how to use anyone, honestly, especially at the receiver position. All right, moving on, number 5 here. Last guy to know. We got to throw the defense a bone here because Kentucky, we know they're known for their defense under Mark Stoops, right? Maybe not so much right now. But I think their best player on defense is a guy named Alex Afari Jr. He plays inside linebacker for them. He is one of the few remaining veterans from last year's unit. They lost a ton of players that honestly played a ton of football for Kentucky over the years. A guy like Dion Walker, right? Lose a guy like that. But Afari is back, and he was productive for them last year. Talented player. I think this year he's clearly the leader of the defense. He was the second leading tackler on the team last year, even with all the returning talent experience they had last year. Second leading tackler, who actually led Kentucky in tackles for loss last year, so was one of the more disruptive players for that Kentucky defense a year ago. And right now, through 4 games, he is predictably the leading tackler on this Kentucky team. He's a really good all-around player in the middle of that defense. He's effective between the tackles, defending the downhill run game. He's got enough athleticism to be able to run sideline to sideline. He is disruptive, attacking the ball carrier downhill, creating tackles for loss. He's a decent pass rusher, not a dynamic pass rusher, but he has the ability to rush the passer and if not get him on the ground, to at least affect the passer. So I do think probably he is their best defensive player right now, at least through the first 4 games of the season. So those are your 5 players to know all in this Kentucky roster heading into this Saturday's matchup. Now let's move on to our next section here. So that was 5 players to know. Let's go 4 stats that matter. Off the top here, number 1. There are 2 teams in the SEC right now through the first 5 weeks of the season that are sitting there with a negative yardage margin. What does that mean if you're not familiar with that stat? Yardage margin, you take the number of yards an offense, a team has gained, and you subtract from that the number of yards they have surrendered defensively, okay? Every team in the SEC, save for 2 of them, are at least in the positive. They at least have a positive yardage margin. There are 2 teams through the first 5 weeks that do not. Who are those 2 teams? Well, they are the South Carolina Gamecocks and, you guessed it, the Kentucky Wildcats. In fact, Kentucky has the lowest yardage margin of any team in the entire SEC. They are currently negative 198 on the season compared to South Carolina, who's the next worst, at negative 84 on the season. So what does that mean? Negative 198 means that South Carolina has been outgained by its opponents by 198 yards to this point in the season through their first 4 games. And guys, there's more context than that. So sure, they have a almost twice as bad yardage margin as South Carolina. But here's the other thing, guys. South Carolina has already played 4 Power 4 games. Kentucky's only played 2. And their yardage margin, again, is already worse than South Carolina's. So, and also beyond that, who are the 2 non-Power 4 teams that Kentucky has played? Toledo and Eastern Michigan. Toledo is that's a good MAC program, one of the better teams in the MAC. Eastern Michigan is not. That's not a good MAC team, right? And those 2 teams, Toledo and Eastern Michigan, right now are a combined 4-6 to this point on the season. So what I'm telling you, if you look at the yardage margin where they are last in the SEC, only played 2 Power 4 opponents, and they're still that bad in their yardage margin, what I'm telling you guys is that statistically, Kentucky is hands down the single worst team in the SEC. Statistically. Now on the field, like teams can improve, teams can get better, but through the first 5 weeks of the season, there is no team in the league that is worse statistically than Kentucky is from an overall standpoint, from a yardage margin standpoint. So that's number 1. That's a good starting point. This is a bad Kentucky team, guys. This is not a good football team. They were bad last year. They are worse this year, man. Believe it or not. I know that's hard to believe. Were they 4-8 last year? They are worse this year. Some way, somehow, they are worse. Now, number 2 here, in keeping with tradition, let's think about why is Kentucky bad? Why are they so bad this year? Why are they the worst team in the SEC, in my opinion, and again, based on the statistics there? Well, in keeping with tradition, the Kentucky offense, guys, like there's no other way to say it. It is straight up abysmal. They are atrocious on offense, and that is nothing new. It was at 2021, they had that 1 year with Liam Cohen where they were kind of okay, better offensively. But outside that 1 year, that one aberration, they've almost universally every year have been terrible offensively. Some years more than others, but never really good offensively. It's always kind of what's held them back under Mark Stoops. They've just never been able to figure that side of the ball out. A lot of it has to do with the quarterback position, bringing in transfer after transfer after transfer, year after year after year, and basically have never really hit on any of them. Like Will Levis, they hit on like to a degree, but even he wasn't that great. He was highly inefficient. He was just better than the other guys they had. So it's all relative there, but he wasn't even that good at Kentucky. But right now, guys, let me put some context here. Kentucky is second to last in the SEC, averaging a paltry 5.28 yards per play. Specifically, they are virtually incapable of completing the forward pass. They are dead freaking last in the SEC in pass yards, completion percentage, and quarterback rating. There are, in fact, only two Power 4 programs in the entire country that have worse passing numbers than Kentucky does in terms of passing yards per game. That would be North Carolina, who is dreadful on offense, I think they're about to make a quarterback change here this week, and Iowa, who, like, if you watch Iowa football, like, Iowa is basically the Big Ten version of Kentucky. They just can never throw the football. They're never good on offense. They kind of rely on a good defense to kind of stay above 500. So North Carolina and Iowa, those are the only two teams that Kentucky is better than in Power 4 football throwing the football. That's how bad it's gotten for Kentucky, guys. So, yeah, when I tell you that Kentucky's bad offensively, that is what I'm talking about. All right. Now, next up here, this is really what's getting Kentucky this year and also last year. Now, last year was injuries for them on defense. But we know, like I said, this offensive struggles are nothing new for Kentucky. That's kind of what they do under Mark Stoops. Their offense is usually like just good enough for them to win like 6 or 7 games, and every once in a while, I think twice in his tenure, like get to 9 wins in the regular season, right? But that is the side of the ball where they consistently struggle. It's the defense under Mark Stoops, as an old defensive coordinator himself back in the day, that has always kind of been there saving the day. That's been the steady force, the driving force behind the Kentucky program throughout Mark Stoops' entire tenure. That's what they've been able to count on. That's been the consistent force. Well, not so much the last 2 years. So if you're wondering why did Kentucky fall off a cliff last year? Like they were solid back in 2023. They weren't great, but they were solid. Made it to a bowl game. I think about 7-5 that year. Not great, but for Kentucky, you'll take that every single year, right? I mean, it's Kentucky football. But last year they fell off the face of the earth. Why? Well, offense was bad. Yeah, they're always bad on offense. But the defense, which was supposed to be good last year, guys, they had a lot of returning talent, but they dealt with a ton of injuries on that side of the football, and that killed them. So when their defense fell off, and it fell off in a big way with all those injuries a year ago, they didn't have the offense to pick up the slack. So the defense falls off. That was what was keeping them afloat. Then you suck. Then you go to 4-8. That's what happens. And that is the case once again this year. That's why they're so bad, guys. Yeah, you expect the offense to be bad, but once again, the defense is not doing its job. Now, they lost all that talent from a year ago. A lot was injured last year, but they lost all those guys who were when healthy were actually good. But this year, guys, so they are second to last in the SEC in yards per play offensively. They're also second to last in the league in yards per play allowed defensively. The only team in the league that they are better than defensively from a yards per play standpoint, from an efficiency standpoint, is Arkansas. And what did Arkansas just do, guys, yesterday? Yeah, they fired their head coach mid-season. So that's the only team that Kentucky has been better than defensively this season. And again, it's not like the competition has been wildly good. Yes, they played Ole Miss at home. Ole Miss is a good football team, but they played 2 Power 4 teams. They played Ole Miss. South Carolina is not good this year, guys. I don't think South Carolina's going to make a bowl. And then you have 2 MAC teams you played, and you're still second to last in the SEC in yards per play allowed. It's not you haven't played Alabama. You haven't played Tennessee like Georgia has, and that's the problem for them. When they struggle that much defensively, it's a given they're going to suck on offense. But when they struggle that much defensively, that's when you have a recipe for a 3-9, 4-8 season, like you got a year ago, like you're likely going to get this year. If you go back and you look at the numbers historically, So last year, they were 13th in the SEC, giving up 5.8 yards per play. This year, they are 15th, currently giving up 5.73 yards per play. You go back to 2023, made a bowl game. They were 4th in the league, giving up 5.2 yards per play. 2022, they were 5th, 5.19 yards per play. In fact, if you look at 2020 through 2023, a 4-year span of time, they finished on average in the SEC 5th, giving up 5.3 yards per play on defense per game. That's why they were like decent. That's why their heads were above water. Why have they fallen off a cliff? Defense has fallen off a cliff. That's the reason, guys. So that's why it's so bad for Kentucky. Not only is their offense bad as it normally is, their defense is just simply not up to Kentucky standard. And they just don't have the guys. That's the problem. They just don't have the guys on that side of the ball. They used to have some guys. They used to have some dudes every now and then, right? Don't have anymore. They just don't have those guys. All right, and the last up here, number 4. Now, I know some of you might be saying, well, Tyler, I know you're telling me Kentucky's terrible. Kentucky was terrible last year, 4-8, and Georgia beat them by 1 point. So why couldn't that happen again this year? Like, are we sure Georgia's just going to roll its hat out there and just run over Kentucky? I hear where you're coming from. I get it. I get it, guys. Says, yes, I was in the stands. I go to all these games. I was there in Lexington last year. I think I died 7, maybe 8 times in the stands, and then thank God, was revived, came back to life, and barely saw a Georgia victory, but we got one, right? So I get it. I get where you might be like a little bit hesitant to think, oh man, like we're really just going to take care of business this week. Well, let me abuse you of that concern, okay? Yes, the game in Lexington last year was close. In fact, the games between Georgia and Kentucky in Lexington in the Mark Stoops era and the Kirby Smart era have been relatively close. We have beaten them. We haven't lost them in Lexington under Kirby Smart, but we've only won those games by an average of 27-16. Kentucky, like when George comes down, I don't know what happens when Eastern Michigan is there, but when George is there, where our program has been, it's a it's a tough SEC environment. It's not like Tennessee. It's not like that. But it's a tough SEC environment. They get excited when Georgia's in town, like pretty much everybody does. We get not only the team's best shot, but we get the opposing fans' best shot. And we see that every time we go there, especially when it was at night last year. So we've only beaten them by an average of 27-16. So 11 points on average in the Mark Stoops era. But when those games have been in Athens under Kirby Smart, Georgia has beaten Kentucky by an average score of 38-9. So we're talking 4+ touchdowns, essentially a 30-point victory on average every time we play Kentucky in Athens under Kirby Smart. And this, in my opinion, is the worst of the Kentucky teams that we have seen. Now, is this Georgia team as good as like the 2021 version? No, it's not. But this Kentucky team is really bad, guys. They are struggling right now. And I just don't see any reason, as we'll get into here with the matchups, why this game should be remotely close, to be quite honest with you. So with that, let's dive into those matchups. Now, number 1, so I got 3 matchups that I like here. 3 reasons why Georgia fans should be confident about Georgia's chances to go out, take care of business, and put Kentucky away. Number 1, this Kentucky football team, as I laid out with one of those stats talking about how bad their passing game has been, Kentucky is just simply not equipped to take advantage of Georgia's biggest weakness thus far, which there's 2 things, right? It's pass rush, but the pass rush goes in conjunction with pass defense, right? We are currently 13th in the SEC in passing defense, giving up an average of 232 yards a game. Now, certainly the numbers are skewed based on the competition. It's early in the season. It's still a relatively small sample size through 4 games. You play Tennessee on the road. You play Alabama, 2 teams with good receivers and strong quarterback play, right? So that does skew things to a degree. But the reality is we have struggled in our past 2 outings against the pass. We are also 14th in the SEC in yards per attempt allowed. We're also 14th in the SEC in completion percentage allowed and 15th in quarterback rating against. That's not getting it done, guys. That's simply unacceptable. I don't care about sample size excuses and who we play excuses. I don't care. That is never good enough for the Georgia Bulldogs. That is certainly not to our standard. Kirby talks about the standard a lot. That is not the standard that we have established at the University of Georgia, especially on the defensive side of the football. So we have clearly had our struggles defending the pass. Yes, the pass rush not getting there is certainly a part of that, but we have had issues defending the pass. Well, Kentucky, as I laid out, guys, is just not equipped to exploit that deficiency. Again, they are dead last in the SEC in pass yards, completion percentage, and quarterback rating. As I laid out, only two Power 4 programs in the country are worse than them on a passing yards per game basis. That's North Carolina and Iowa. And Zach Calzada, like if he was healthy, would those numbers be different? I mean, a little bit. He was healthy for a game and a half, got banged up about halfway through the Ole Miss game, still kept playing, and got pulled out late in that game. So he's been sidelined since week 2 with that shoulder injury to his throwing arm. So that certainly has hurt them. But the reality is, guys, it doesn't matter. He's almost certainly not going to be available to play in this game. And the guy playing in his place, Cutter Boley, as I laid out, guys, I'm going to be real with you. I'm not trying to kill the guy. He's awful. He's just not good. He is not a quality SEC quarterback right now. Can he grow into that? Maybe. I do like the physical tools, but right now, he just doesn't know how to play the position. He holds the ball too long. He doesn't see the field, doesn't diagnose coverages, doesn't do the things that quarterbacks have to be able to do to play at a high level in the SEC. And then on top of that, they also don't have the wide receivers or the offensive system. Their offense is never built around the pass game. Anyway, they need to get the run game going. They try to work play action off that. So they don't have the wide receivers or the offensive system to really threaten us through the air and try to expose that deficiency that we've had in our pass defense. So that is a matchup that I like there. I'm not saying that we're going to dominate them because we haven't really dominated anyone in the pass game, at least SEC teams. But I think that's still a matchup that we can win because they're just so bad trying to put the ball in the air. They're just not in a position to be able to take advantage of some of the issues that we have had defending the pass in recent weeks. All right. Matchup number 2 that I like, that gives me reason for optimism in this game, being able to take care of business against Kentucky, would be that I think this might just be the game that the Georgia pass rush finally gets a little momentum, finally gets healthy, finally gets right. I talked about it earlier in the week, guys. I will double down on it right now. There were a lot of reasons why we lost that game against Alabama. Going back and rewatching it time and time again, which, yes, I'm sick in the head. I don't know why I do that to myself, but I'm trying to get ready to talk about this stuff with you guys and give you some real analytical takes on this and be able to back my takes up by watching the games, watching the All-22, watching TV copy, watching all the copies. And I'll go back to it. Like the 4th and 1, yeah, that was a disaster. The fumble, yeah, that was a disaster. The drop pass by Talon Taylor, yeah, that was a disaster. I'm still having nightmares about that one. Like, we lost the game for a variety of reasons. But if you're trying to distill it down into one big reason, I think it's lack of pass rush, man. They were way too good on third downs. Why? Because they converted 8 third downs that were 3rd and 5 or longer. And with the way they can't run the football, those are obvious passing situations for Alabama. Why were they so successful in those situations? Because we couldn't freaking get after the passer. Simpson had all day to sit back there. And I told you guys coming into that game, if we couldn't rush the passer, when he's got time, he's elite. Like his PFF grade is elite when he has a clean pocket. When he was under pressure, when that pocket got muddled, that's when he falls apart. And that's what Florida State was able to do to him. I thought that we would have a better chance of being able to do that thing because I didn't like their tackles, but we couldn't, man. Like, we got problems there. That is a problem. We've got to figure out a way to fix that. Because right now, our pass rush has been virtually non-existent through the first 4 games. We have a total of 5 sacks through the first 4 games. We are 15th out of 16 teams in the league in sacks right now. I think it's South Carolina, I want to say, has 20 right now. Yeah, they played 5 games. Okay, sure. Okay, they played one more game than us. But guys, they still have 20. They're averaging 4 sacks a game. We're averaging a little over 1. Talk about, again, not being up to our standard, simply not up to Georgia's standard. It's not good enough if we have any aspirations of finding a way to get back into title contention, whether that's conference title or national title contention. None of that's going to happen if we cannot figure out a way to affect the passer on a more consistent basis. Now, can we beat Kentucky without doing that? Yeah, probably, because they just aren't good. But we're going to face some better teams with better quarterbacks and better receivers. And we cannot give them all day like we against Alabama and allow them to just sit back there and deliver the football unmolested, okay? Now, Kentucky, on the flip side, so we've been bad at rushing the passer. Last week against South Carolina. Now, South Carolina does rush the passer well, right? Dylan Stewart, one of the better pass rushers in the entire country. But Kentucky gave up 6 sacks and 10 tackles for loss last week against South Carolina. And of course, the offensive line plays a role in that. They're not particularly good on the offensive line. They lost a lot of guys from last year. But I think if you go back and you watch the tape from last week in South Carolina, the offensive line wasn't good. But I think the bigger issue was Cutter Boley himself at quarterback. The guy has zero pocket presence. He holds the ball way too long because he doesn't know what he's seeing out there. He doesn't know where to go with the football, gets confused, panics at times, pulls the ball down when he shouldn't pull the ball down, and just doesn't have the ability to step up in the pocket, slide right, slide left. He kind of just goes into a shell and gets sacked. So he is a big part of the problem, and he is almost certainly going to be the quarterback for them this week. He was a deer in the freaking headlights against South Carolina on Saturday night. So if that is the case, even if Georgia has had issues rushing the passer, this has got to be our best opportunity to do so. And if we can't get after Boley, we got problems, man. Like I'm highly concerned about where our pass rush is right now and our ability to find answers there. But if we cannot get after Boley against this Kentucky O-line and with his issues, being able to go through progressions and holding the ball way too long, man, we might have no hope. I might lose all hope, guys, if we cannot get after him in this game. 6 sacks we could go. 6 sacks, 10 TFLs. I'm sure they'll try to game plan some ways around that, get the ball out of his hands a little bit quicker, all of that. But if they get in the third line situations where they got to drop back and they have to in obvious passing situations, and if we cannot get to him like we were not capable of doing last week against Alabama, I'm gonna lose all hope, man. So I'm just, please God, let's not let that be the case. I don't want to lose hope after the 5th game of the season, guys. So we got to find a way to get after him. And I believe, based off what I've seen from this Kentucky offense, that we have a good chance of at least showing some progress rushing the passer on Saturday. All right, third matchup I like here. Third reason for optimism. I think that Georgia should be able to neutralize the one thing that this Kentucky team does even sort of okay, at least especially on the offensive side of the football, which is running the ball. They don't throw the ball well at all, right? And their overall rushing numbers are not great. They're not particularly good. They're ninth in the SEC in rushing yards per game. At 188 yards per game. But like the SEC guy, it's a good conference, right? So they're actually top 50 nationally, top 45 nationally, in fact, in rushing offense at 188 yards a game. I mentioned Seth McGowan earlier. I think he is the real deal, guys. I think he's really good. Back-to-back 100-yard games against Eastern Michigan and last week against the SEC opponent on the road at night in Columbia, South Carolina. They ran for 172 yards against Ole Miss. Now, I think Ole Miss's defense does have a lot of issues, but the fact is, even like without the benefit of any kind of passing game, they still ran for 172 against that Ole Miss defense. Now, they only ran for 108 against South Carolina, but a big part of the overall rush numbers was the sacks, right? You have 6 sacks. I think Boley rushed for like minus 31 yards in the game because they take the sack yardage out of that. But McGowan himself at running back had 112 yards rushing and averaged 6.6 yards per rush against South Carolina. So again, I'm not telling you they're an elite run team, but that's clearly what they do best on offense because they can't throw the ball to save their freaking lives. Now, fortunately for Georgia, stopping the run is also what we do best on defense. Our pass defense issues are well documented, as I laid out for you a few minutes ago. But we have stopped the run very consistently all season long. We essentially shut down both Tennessee and Alabama against the run. Like for the most part, I mean, those two teams combined average 3.4 yards per rush against us. Like if you can hold teams like Bama and Tennessee to 3.4 yards per rush, I think you're getting the job done defensively. So we have been good against the run. In fact, we had Alabama's running back specifically to 76 yards rushing on 26 carries, less than 3 yards per rush when Bama's running backs were handing the football and tried to run. Like we completely shut them down. So if that happens again, if we are able to completely stifle Kentucky's run game, and I do have a lot of respect for McGowan. I think he's good. I don't think their offensive line's particularly good. They're not balanced, so we don't really have to gear up against the pass. We can load the box up if we feel like we need to, because I don't think they have the ability to really make us pay for it on the outside. But if that happens again, if we are able to shut down the Kentucky run game, Kentucky is just not remotely equipped to turn to the pass game to make us pay the way that Tennessee and Alabama were. So that certainly an advantage for Georgia in this game, in my humble opinion. All right, moving on here. Next section, I got two players for you to watch from the Georgia football team. Two guys I think can have big games for Georgia on Saturday against Kentucky. Number one, let's go to, I think, probably the player of the game for Georgia against Alabama. I think had his coming out party. It has been really good all season long, but kind of had that maybe a national coming out party, and that's running back Chauncey Bowens, who put up his first career 100-yard outing against Alabama. I think it was only 12 total rushes. So highly efficient game for him, number of big explosive runs. I think Chauncey has a very strong chance to put up his second consecutive 100-yard outing against this Kentucky defense. Guys, Kentucky defensively is giving up 200 yards rushing per game in their two SEC contests against Ole Miss, who does run the ball well, and South Carolina, who cannot run the ball well. Guys, South Carolina in its two other games against Vandy, Missouri. So South Carolina put up 178 on the ground against Kentucky last week. In its two other games against SEC teams, against Vandy and Mizzou, the Gamecocks averaged 38 yards rushing per game in a paltry, measly 1.3 yards per rush. They had -9 yards rushing against Missouri a couple weeks ago, and they put up 178 on that Kentucky defense. You think about what Georgia's done well offensively. Yeah, we've been able to generate some more explosive pass plays in recent weeks, but we have consistently, no matter who it is, whether it's Marshall, Austin Peay, Tennessee, Alabama, we have consistently been able to run the football. We ran for 170 plus, or we ran for almost 200 against Tennessee. We ran for over 220 against Alabama on Saturday, right? We've been able to run the football against a lot better defenses with a lot better personnel than this Kentucky defense. So I think Chauncey, number one, I think he's going to get the start. After what we saw from Nate Frazier putting the ball on the ground, we're not going to bench Nate forever. Nate's a talented guy. He's going to get more opportunities. But I do think you saw us basically send a message after that fumble saying, you're not getting back in this game. I don't remember seeing him get another snap in that game against Alabama. So I think it makes sense that Chauncey, the way he performed, and Nate putting the ball on the ground the way that he did, and us wanting to emphasize not turning the football over, it stands to reason Chauncey is going to get the start this week and probably, we do a good job of splitting carries, but probably get more carries than the other backs like we saw a week ago. And if that's the case against a Kentucky rush defense that is struggling the way that it is right now, it's just as bad as it is, there's a good chance Chauncey puts up another 100-yard game, man. I love his vision right now. He showed me a burst, acceleration that I did not see from him a year ago. I love what Chauncey's doing, man. Running with power, breaking tackles in space, making people miss. Love it, man. So I think Chauncey's in line for another big game here against the Wildcats. And then the second guy I'm going to tell you to watch in this Georgia roster. Let's go defense here. I'm going to double down on this. I said Chris Cole a week ago, coming to the Alabama game. I thought that he'd have more success rushing the passer against Alabama's edges because I don't think their tackles are very good, and I still don't think their tackles are very good. So I highlighted him last week. Now, Cole was not as disruptive in that game as I thought he could be, but he also wasn't rushing the passer on every one of those situations. But this week, guys, I do believe Cole is going to have a lot of opportunities to rush the passer. Because I do not, like I laid out, I do not think that Kentucky will be able to run the football against this Georgia defense. That's what we've done well. They run the ball. That's the best thing they do. But we stop the run very well defensively. And our personnel, quite simply, is just better than their offensive personnel. It's just that simple, guys. So I do not think they'll be able to run the football. Why does that matter? Because that means they're going to be in third and long a lot of the game on Saturday. If that is the case, that's a problem for Kentucky, guys. That was a disaster situation from a week ago with the kind of pass rushers like Dylan Stewart that South Carolina has. When they couldn't run the football, when they were in third and long, it was lights out for Cutter Boley and that Kentucky offense to the tune of 6 sacks and 10 overall tackles for loss. So I do think that Georgia will be able to stop the Kentucky run game. I do think that we'll be able to get them in third and long. Like we were able to get Alabama in third and long. And this week, it's a different story. When we get Kentucky to third and long, I do believe that the Georgia pass rush will get going. I don't have a lot of faith in Alabama's edges, but I have less faith in that Kentucky offensive line, and I have a lot less faith in their quarterback. The guy doesn't see it. He doesn't feel it, doesn't understand what he's looking at, holds ball way too long. So I think the Georgia pass rush gets going this week. I think Chris Cole is going to be the driving force behind that. His havoc rate right now, guys, is roughly twice as high as the next highest player on the Georgia defense. So he's the guy. I think he has a big weak rush on the passer, and hopefully, hoping to God, we get that pass rush going heading into a big matchup on the road against Auburn next week. All right, last thing here, guys. Now, usually what I do with my countdown, usually it's 3 matchups I like, 2 causes for concern, and then 1 player to watch for Georgia. I flipped it a little bit this week and went 2 players to watch for Georgia and 1 reason for concern because, guys, I had a really hard time coming up with 2 reasons why Georgia fans should be concerned about this matchup. In fact, almost every one of the matchups in this game favors Georgia, right? So I didn't want to just make things up just to make things up, right? And fill you full of a bunch of BS. I want to be real with you guys. So I flipped it a little bit. But there is one thing that I think that we should be careful for here. I think there's one reason that concern is maybe to a degree, warranted here in this game. And it's quite simply this, guys. Hangover effect. Has nothing to do with X's and O's. From an X's and O's standpoint, we should beat this team by 40 points. Minimum. From an X's and O's standpoint. If we wanted to, we played our starters all game long, we should win this game by 30, 40 points. Which is usually what we do in Kentucky in Athens anyway. But it's not an X's and O thing. It's a mentality thing, guys. I think the hangover effect is real. College football with young football players, you see it week in, you see it week out. In fact, I make a lot of money betting with my bookie on teams that I think are going to have a hangover coming off a tough loss the week before, right? Or a close loss, maybe a close win, whatever it might be, where a hangover is possible. And clearly, guys, when you look at the game that Georgia's coming off of last week against Alabama, a highly anticipated matchup, an incredibly hyped up matchup, a matchup that we lost again, which creates all these questions that we have to answer every year about Georgia and Alabama. Those questions get brought up again and again. Our players, our coaches, our fans, the team, they hear it all week long. Now, after that game, we stay home to play the worst team in the SEC, in my opinion, at noon with likely a sleepy crowd. Your boy's going to be there doing his part, screaming bloody murder, trying to get everyone hyped up. But it's hard, man. I'm one guy, right? And I've seen a lot of these noon games, especially in situations like this against teams like Kentucky. At noon, a lot of times the crowd's sleepy. A lot of times the crowd's late arriving. The team, understandably so, might be sleepwalking a little bit. Because what do we have on deck? We have a big rivalry matchup on the road against Auburn. So what I'm telling you guys is that the conditions here are ripe for, I really don't want to say upset, guys. I just don't see any way that happens. But these are the types of conditions in which upsets can happen. The type of conditions in which games that have no business being remotely close end up being closer than they should be, right? So for me, that is the one cause for concern. From a matchup standpoint, there's no cause for concern, guys. They really just don't match up with us anywhere across the board. That's just the reality, guys. Go watch the tape. You'll see it for yourself. But the hangover effect is real, man. It's real in college football. I see it week in and week out. Now, I do believe in Kirby Smart. I do believe in our team leadership. And seeing that, understanding that that is a possibility, and working very hard, pushing to overdrive to counteract that, to make sure that does not happen. And typically things like Georgia's not immune to that. Like we have had some of these games where we do like let's say Mississippi State last year, right? Mississippi State, we screw up against Alabama. You come back home, we beat Auburn, and then you play Mississippi State. At the time, they were the worst team in the SEC last year, right? And then you have a big game on the road against Texas the next week, and we came out humming offensive against Mississippi State, but then we got content, let them come back and put some touchdowns up on the board, and it was just an ugly, sloppy win that was nowhere near our standard. And it's not that they beat us, but that game was in the second half far closer than that game had any business being. Georgia, at its best, would have beaten Mississippi State by 50 plus last year with a freshman quarterback, right? With Van Buren playing quarterback, with no Blake Shapen out with an injury. But we kind of sleptwalked through that game. It was an early game, a noon kick. The crowd was late arriving. The crowd was sleepy because it was sandwiched between a rivalry game against Auburn and then a road trip, and a highly anticipated road trip to Texas. So I'm just saying, we see things like that. So I'm not telling you upset alert, watch out. I don't think I just don't think they're close enough to be able to pull the upset, especially in Athens. But could this game be closer than it should be? Could it be a game that potentially becomes a little more unsettling for us than it should be? Cause you to squirm in your seat there in Sanford Stadium? Cause you to be, if you're at home watching it, pace back and forth more than you thought you'd have to? Pay a little closer attention to it than you thought you'd have to? Yeah, I think that could happen considering the setup, right? The hangover effect is in play here. It is in play. So for me, guys, that's the only cause for concern. So just want to put that out there. I think that is real. But with that, guys, that's all I got for you. That is my deep dive breakdown of this Georgia-Kentucky matchup. I will be back one more time later this week to give you guys my final keys to the game and my official prediction on whether Georgia, I'm not even going to say he's going to beat Kentucky, whether Georgia will be able to cover this spread. I'll give you my score prediction later on this week, so make sure to check back for that, guys. But thank you so much for being here. I greatly appreciate each and every one of you. If you are a diehard Georgia fan and you enjoy this type of content, go ahead, subscribe right now, hit that notification button, like, comment. What do you guys think about this matchup? Love to hear from you guys, but thank you so much. Appreciate you being here. I'm Tyler, and as always, go Dogs!
Man, is there going to be some property destroyed tonight. 26-21.